Donald Trump, Scott Bessent, and the United States government just signaled that a strategic Bitcoin reserve is just the beginning. They're waking up to the same reality that we all do. We don't have enough Bitcoin.
Publics and privates. Every night I wake up at about 3 in the morning and I go, what an idiot. Why didn't I invest more in Bitcoin? So that is my basic view.
Bitcoin is a simple idea with profound implications. Brian Armstrong recently made a bold prediction about Bitcoin challenging the future of the dollar in the digital 21st century. With Bitcoin whales buying over $100 billion worth of Bitcoin over the last few weeks, someone knows something's going on, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
If I was advising the United States, I would say, all the capital in the world is going to flow into cyberspace, into the Bitcoin network. It's in the best interest of the United States to own as much of it as they can before everybody else in the world realizes what's happening.
Bitcoin is a simple idea with profound implications, not only for us individually, but for governments and nations geopolitically, especially the US government. The United States government understands that the person, the country, or the company that owns the most digital real estate in cyberspace will be the most economically advantaged moving forward in the 21st digital century. And this is why this is one of the best risk-adjusted times to buy Bitcoin, because the United States government is essentially moving out all of the barriers that once stood in the way of Bitcoin adoption. They're breaking down the protective barriers that made assets like Bitcoin in the past work for only Wall Street. But now, they're making sure that it works for Main Street as well.
We will take a close look at regulatory impediments to blockchain, stablecoins, and new payment systems. And we will consider reforms to unleash the awesome power of the American capital markets. Americans deserve a financial services industry that works for all Americans, including and especially Main Street.
Donald Trump says that his administration seeks to unleash the capitalism and the American ingenuity and drive into this new financial asset class.
We ended Operation Choke Point 2.0. I created the first presidential working group on digital assets. I named a pro-freedom, pro-innovation SEC chair, a great man named Paul Atkins, and we created the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and the United States Digital Asset Stockpile. But we are not done yet. My administration is working with Congress to pass the Genius Act, supporting the creation of dollar-backed stablecoins. And we also will be working to create clear and simple market frameworks that will allow America to dominate the future of crypto and Bitcoin.
You don't want to be behind the United States government when they start buying. You want to be ahead of them. You don't want to be like this $60 billion asset manager who wakes up in the middle of the night wishing that he had bought more Bitcoin.
Publics and privates. Every night I wake up at about 3 in the morning and I go, what an idiot. Why didn't I invest more in Bitcoin? So that is my basic view. And I sort of think of the world of investing. Sometimes you invest on a fundamental basis. Sometimes you invest based on the momentum. So that's one axis. And the other axis is this an obvious idea or is this a complicated idea? And my lessons after doing this for 25 years, if it's a complicated idea, it never works. So scratch those out. And if it's a simple fundamental idea, that tends to be like a stock. But something like Bitcoin, it's actually a really simple idea. The previous speaker who said, oh yeah, it's gonna be the currency of the world. It's just, that's as simple as it.
Bitcoin could become the new global reserve currency in the new digital world that we're entering into. And this isn't some far-fetched idea from Bitcoin bros or OG Bitcoiners, but people like Brian Armstrong, who run a publicly traded company.
Right now, democracies around the world are really struggling to get their deficit spending under control. And I think that Bitcoin actually, I guess my crazy little bit out there idea is that I think Bitcoin is going to provide an important check and balance on deficit spending. And if it gets out of control too much, people will flee to it in times of uncertainty. And it could actually end up that Bitcoin is the new reserve currency of the world.
Bitcoin is the new reserve currency. You heard it here first. Thank you, guys.
This is giving businesses and institutions the confidence to invest in Bitcoin and to do so in a major way. This is why people like Phong Le and the CEO of Nakamoto believe that 800 companies could have Bitcoin on their balance sheet by the end of the year.
There's 800 companies, I think, as Phong mentioned, there could be 800 companies buying Bitcoin. You can run the numbers, and it's like, right now there's roughly 800,000 Bitcoins that are owned by publicly traded companies. If there's 800 companies in a year from now, which I think is a conservative number, honestly, if there's 800 companies a year from now and they each own 1,000 Bitcoins, which is peanuts relative to some of these Bitcoin treasuries that are out there, that doubles the amount of Bitcoin being held by public companies. So you can look at how much Bitcoin's available for sale on exchanges. It's single digit millions. It's 1-2 million Bitcoins that are available for sale. Can you imagine 1,000 companies or 10,000 companies in the marketplace bidding every single day? I mean, the price of Bitcoin here is just going to absolutely run.
In a conversation with Pierre Richard, Matt Cole from Strive Asset Management makes a clear call to board members and officers of publicly traded companies that if you're sitting on cash and not buying Bitcoin, you're going to be losing out.
You better have Bitcoin on your balance sheet, right? If you're sitting there on a stockpile of cash that's losing purchasing power, and we go in depth on this, I know you go in depth on this too, and inflation actually hides how much the value of a dollar is being eroded, right? Because what's going up the most is actually financial assets. And you see this for the individuals, and especially individuals that don't own Bitcoin. And it's really hard to afford a home. It's really hard to afford having kids. One of the things that's really refreshing to me at the Bitcoin conference is how many people I meet that have kids, that have flourishing lives, that I'm a Christian, that are people of faith, right? That this community has optimism because they found a great asset, right, that gives the power back to the individual. Well, the same thing can happen to corporations.
One of the ways that you can execute on a Bitcoin strategy is by never selling your Bitcoin. That's how wealthy people have done it for centuries. They buy the most scarce and desirable assets and they hold on to them and pass them down for generations. They also borrow against them. You can do that with Ledn, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018. They've issued over $9 billion worth of loans to tens of thousands of customers all across the globe. They allow you to unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin, and doing so in an open, fast, and transparent manner. If you want a $5,000 loan, well, you post $10,000 in Bitcoin collateral. They typically fund your account in less than 24 hours, 18 hours to be exact. Get started with loans at just 12.4% or learn.ledn.io/simply to get 0.25% off your first loan. Never sell your Bitcoin. One of the things you need to do if you own Bitcoin is to remove your Bitcoin from exchanges. There's a tweet that's going around Twitter that says a guy lost 240K of his Bitcoin that he left on the Coinbase. You can remove all of that worry by getting a coach at the Bitcoin Way, who will help you remove your Bitcoin from third-party exchanges confidently, safely, securely, and to do so in a way that will protect your assets from people and bad actors that might be on Coinbase that might have your information. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with our team at thebitcoinway.com/simplybitcoin. We have multiple people calling for Bitcoin between $150K and $250K this year. And that's because they understand the multitude of people, not just individuals, but institutions, countries, nation states, that are waking up to this idea that Bitcoin is a scarce asset. 95% of Bitcoin has been mined, but 5% is still left, and very few people own it. This is an excellent tailwind for you to get into Bitcoin.
95% of all Bitcoin's been mined, but 95% of the world doesn't own Bitcoin. So I just think that there's still a huge demand versus supply imbalance, meaning there's a lot more potential buyers of Bitcoin over the next 10 years. And so I think there's a lot of upside into year end.
Into your 150 target.
Yeah, 150, maybe 200, even 250 this year.
What?
Mike Novogratz thinks that we'll hit 150K to 180K this year.
And I said, where does Bitcoin go between now and December 31st of 2025? And you said, I'm guessing 180,000, but it'll be really volatile and very bumpy ride. Are you still at 180?
Yeah, listen, we went down to 75 after the election, put new highs. We retested where the election happened. Everyone gets scared. And now we're making new highs. And so we're in the price discovery moment. We, as an American, we had hoped that Scott Bessent was going to give you 3% growth, 3%, budget deficits. I think today he just said maybe the last year I'll get to 4%. We're going to have an 8% budget deficit or higher this year. We had hoped Elon Musk was going to cut something from government spending, and instead he left with a black eye. And, you know, Bitcoin's price is going to be correlated to how fiscally conservative and prudent our government is. And it's a populist government. We have a populist government on the left. Now we have a populist government on the right. They love spending money, and therefore you're going to have a really nice trajectory for Bitcoin.
Okay, so is 180 still?
130, 150, 180. Like once it goes, you don't know where it's going to stop, but it's all within the realm of possibility.
In the midst of all of this uncertainty happening in the world, wars breaking out in the Middle East, riots happening in LA, economic malaise and collapse happening right in front of our eyes in places like Japan or in China, real estate being unaffordable in Australia, or in Canada if you come over here to the North American side. You have economic instability everywhere in the world, and it's because we all operate on the same monetary system and standard. We all have a common experience of life becoming more unaffordable and things costing more and more that are outpacing the amount of GDP and growth that's happening in the world, even with AI. AI won't save us. New politicians won't save us. What will save us is a new economic standard, a new currency, a new store of value, and that's Bitcoin. Don't overcomplicate the trade.
No force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come.
No force can stop an idea whose time has come. And that's why what's happening in the world, regardless of what goes down, it's still TikTok next block. One of the ways that you can continue to level up in your Bitcoin journey is by educating yourself. And one of the ways you can do that is by learning about the machines, the makers, the manufacturers, and the keepers behind the Bitcoin network. And that's Bitcoin miners. Come hang with the Simply Bitcoin team down in Dallas, Texas from November 11th through November 13th at the second Mining Disrupt conference happening this year. Use the promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off your tickets. If you get value from these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.